Good afternoon, everyone. So, as we know, welcome to this episode of Work Convo. We know that navigating a career in the modern workplace can be a real challenge. At times, it can be a real struggle. So, for modern leaders, you know that mindset is everything when it comes to having a successful career and life. So there's some things that we think here at Humanify HR Consulting that we need to talk about when it comes to work. So Work Convo is a curated series of LinkedIn live sessions and brings you real conversations with real people about work and life that inspire. So before we get started, I just wanted to do a brief welcome to country, and I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land that I'm meeting, the Ngunnawal people, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Yuin land that I grew up in and who shaped who I am today. So today we're joined by the incredible Turia Pitt on Work Convo, and Turia is a truly inspirational human being, and many of you would know her story. I'm particularly excited to be speaking with Turia as we went to school together. And it's always really special to reconnect with people that you have a shared history with. So welcome, Turia, to the conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Sarah. So Sarah and I think you were the year below me, if I've got that right. I'm calling in from Yuin country right now, and it's just it's always really surprising for me to see how well some of my peers have done from school, Sarah. So this is I'm really looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, and likewise with you too, Turia. This is a really special conversation, and we're really excited about it today. So it's a bit of an experiment here with LinkedIn Live. So we're hoping, or I'm hoping, that I don't break anything. And I want you to be part of the conversation too today as it happens. So please share any of your questions. We can see some of your comments if you're on LinkedIn at the moment. That will come through, and I'll try and incorporate those into the conversation as we go through. So I'm going to start with the question. So Turia, again, so grateful to have you here with us today. You have such an incredible story that has been a real source of inspiration to so many, both here in Australia and around the world. And for me personally, as well as a young woman in the workplace, I always remember listening to your different things that you would be talking about on different podcasts and getting that just real sense of inspiration from you. So I have to say that when I heard the news of your accident, and I was looking on your Wikipedia page this morning, and it looks like it was around 13 years ago to the almost the day this month. So it was really hard, I think, for some of through mutual friends at the time. I heard of the news. It was really heartbreaking for a lot of people in our small town to hear what happened to you. So and what you were going through at that time, but look at you now, and you're just thriving now. And just the question I have and I want to ask you is, how are you and what's been happening in your life these days?
Oh, thanks, Sarah. If I just go back for a moment to those earlier days after my recovery, I don't really think I would have recovered as well as what I've done if I didn't have support. And I think you guys who are listening to this would all probably know this, but you never achieve anything great by yourself. You always need to work with other people, work in a team, work with your colleagues. Or for me, it was having all of this help and support from the people around me. And I know my little community of Ulladulla did really amazing things for me, did fundraisers, all sorts of things. And it was for such an isolating time in my life, it was really comforting to know that I had people around me who believed in me and who were supporting me and helping me. And so I've never forgotten that, even though these days life is actually pretty good. So my husband, he works away a lot. We've got two small kids. I'm writing my next book. It's actually due in 3 weeks. It's due in 3
Wow.
weeks, and I have like a lot more words yet to write. So it's about the paradox of modern motherhood and all of the things that we expect a woman to be able to do. I have a running program. We're trying to bring that to companies because I think there's been some amazing benefits that running has shown to have had for people who take on a new challenge. And then just having, good chats with people like yourself, Sarah.
Yeah, great. That support element sounds like it's been really important and to you. And writing your fourth book, is it your fourth or your fifth book?
It's my fourth. It's the fourth one.
Wow. Yeah, wow.
But
Must be a big process.
my natural state is to be on a computer in a dark
Yeah.
room by myself.
Yeah. Typing. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited. I'm
yeah,
excited to see about the new book. So what you've just described there, what you have been through has been really hectic for anyone to go through. But what's so inspirational is, about you as a person is that you don't let that experience define you, and you've actually used that to inspire other people. And personally, that's something I really admire in you, because that's a really hard thing for someone to do. How do you do that? And how do you stay resilient and keep yourself going and inspired?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so I just want to unpack it a little bit because if you jump onto someone's social media, you might get the impression that life's good, they're happy all the time, they've got wonderful friends and family, no dramas at all. And I don't think that's reflective it's certainly not reflective of my experience. And I don't know if it's reflective of everyone's lives. And I think we've all got a bit of light and shade in our lives. So some days I do feel good, I do feel energetic, I do feel inspired, I do feel motivated. Maybe some other days I might be really exhausted, I might feel depleted, I might have just been giving to everyone around me and not done anything for myself to fill my cup. I might be resentful of my husband who's working away while I'm looking after our two small children. And I think we can hold both of those things at the same time. And one of the things I did in my recovery, and I didn't learn this myself, I got this tip from my psychologist, is that if you're feeling a negative emotion, sad, defeated, downhearted, whatever it is, it's actually okay to feel like that. And I never really understood that before I went through everything I went through. I always thought you had to put on a brave face, stay positive, all of those kinds of things. And I think we can be doing ourselves a disservice sometimes. So if you're feeling sad, annoyed, irritated, stressed, whatever it is, it's okay just to sit with that. I know it's not comfortable. I know it's not always pleasant, but there's actually nothing wrong with feeling like that and just saying to yourself, well, this is how I feel, and hopefully I won't feel like this tomorrow. Sarah, someone's vacuuming upstairs. I might just grab my AirPods if that's okay.
That's all good.
Apologies.
That's all good.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your patience.
Things always happen at inopportune times, don't they? Like that. At least the vacuuming is getting done. That's a good thing. That's not everyone has that opportunity,
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think where you were leaving that, I think a lot of those things we were speaking about, where your psychologist was making those suggestions about just letting you kind of sit with the emotions that you're feeling, and I think that's a really important takeaway in terms of, because we are told a lot, particularly in the context of the workplace, that we kind of leave our true feelings and emotions and things, and we put our kind of armor on and we come into work and we just get our work done and we go home sometimes in the workplace. So that advice you're providing there about kind of just letting yourself actually express yourself and feel your emotions, that's a really good piece of advice there. Yeah.
And I suppose if you think about what maybe some of us do at the workplace, you've got to suck it up. You have to pretend stuff doesn't matter to you. You have to, I mentioned before this call that I get paid a lot of money to give speeches about resilience to companies. And I don't think being resilient is a prerequisite to be able to go to work. And I think if there's any, leaders on this call, try and think about what it is that you could do for your employees, for your teammates, so they do feel like work is a safe place for them.
Yeah, absolutely, because that psychological safety is so important. That's
Yeah.
kind of a good segue. And we're kind of going to go back a little bit here in terms of going back to the future almost. And for you and I, kind of that image of ourselves as kind of the kind of 14-year-old teenager at Ulladulla High School. What did you think when you were at school? What did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
Well, Sarah, I want to quickly ask you that question. What did you think you were going to be?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be the Prime Minister, but as I've kind of realised what that looks like and worked in government for 10 years, it's kind of hasn't really. It sounded like a good idea at school, but the actual doing part of that, like I haven't really got around to that just yet. But who knows?
Okay. Yeah, well, we've still got a long future ahead of ourselves, Sarah. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be. Like I thought I got really good marks at school, and I've always been like a very logical person. So I wrote down a list of things that I was good at, maths and science and those types of things, and I wrote down a list of what I wanted from a job. I wanted to get paid well. I wanted to have good opportunities. I wanted, a chance to travel. And so with those two lists, I kind of landed with engineering, and more specifically mining engineering. And I didn't last very long as a mining engineer because I got injured, had my accident maybe like a year after I started working. I did really, really love it. On reflection, I don't know, and maybe this is a broader topic for women in the workplace. I'm not sure how supportive the mine would have been when I became a mother, in terms of balancing childcare with work obligations that you have. So I miss the challenge of it, but the job I have these days gives me that flexibility and that autonomy and that ownership over my time.
Yeah, that flexibility is so important in terms of that space. Your career in engineering, so as a mining engineer, that is a really interesting concept on its own in terms of how did you land in that space, do you think, coming out of, we're going to talk a little bit about where we did go to school and kind of, being a mining engineer as a young woman sitting at a school as a 15-year-old in Ulladulla High School. Like that's a pretty remote. How did you get to that thinking?
I look, I knew I wanted to do some type of engineering, and I looked up some mining blasts on the internet, and I thought, oh, that looks pretty cool, and so that was just the naive idea that I had in my head as a younger person. But then when I started mining engineering, I really loved how challenging it was, and it's also a very male-dominated industry. So I think from my graduating cohort, there was 50 guys and 5 girls, and I really relished that challenge as well. And so I think challenges are good for us, but I think there's a fine line, because you want people to feel like they're safe and they're supported at their workplaces. And there was a couple of instances that I had of being a young woman at a mine site where I didn't feel safe, where I was there was inappropriate comments, there was lewd comments thrown at me, and being a younger person, I wasn't really sure how to navigate that, and there was no clear path for me to navigate that sort of commentary or those sort of actions either. So that was really disappointing. You go to uni for 5 years and you try really hard at something, and you start your career. So that was probably a disappointing aspect of it. And had the leaders at the time been better done a better job. Maybe my reflections of being a mining engineer would be more positive. Having said that, I still really enjoyed that career.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's interesting that you say that too, because we're the same age, around the same age as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think very much when I entered the workforce, there was always kind of this view that, you know, some of those things around, you know, the way women are treated had improved. And I was of the view that, you know, it's getting better. And it's kind of that interesting thing that when we do even speak to people our age, that we still hear these stories of, hang on a second, that actually isn't getting very much better, or, you know, so it's interesting just to see that progress. I think there's a lot of opportunity for organizations to keep, you know, not thinking that everything's all okay and it's getting better. You do hear that a lot, and I think it gives almost a bit of a false sense of kind of where that's at, because the experiences don't always tell that story.
And I think if something's getting better, that's a positive. But I think as well, it needs to be so much better, because I think workplaces need to be looking after their team, and they need to be that means looking after their employees, no matter what sex they are.
Absolutely. So next question was just around how grown up we are now. And can you believe that in terms of kind of where we came from, in terms of the small town that we both grew up in? Just can you speak a little bit to that in terms of your journey and how you reflect on that?
Yeah, I think, you know, Ulladulla High School, when we went to it, I would say it would be. I'd say it was a bit of a rough high school, if that's if that's fair to say. Um, I think it made me who I am, though. It did make me more gritty and more determined. So I think I never would have thought that I would be where I am when I was back at high school, right? Because you have all of these pipe dreams and, you know, there's kind of these wishes for the future. And I never would have wanted to get injured in an ultra marathon, but I did. And I'm also really proud of everything I've done since that, because if I had have seen my story on 60 Minutes, I would have said to myself, there's no way I would be as strong as that girl is. And it turns out I was, you know, quote unquote strong enough. So I think, I think it's really interesting. And I'm always really proud to say that I graduated from Ulladulla High School.
Yeah, it's an interesting little space in terms of, that dynamic and what that does to you in terms of, you know, really, you know, in comparison to maybe going to a private girls' school, or, you know, in a city. That experience of growing up in a small town, I think, is really quite kind of pivotal in terms of, you spoke there about that grit and that determination that you have from those experiences. Really, really interesting there. Turia spoke a little bit about that there. Our school, Ulladulla High School, again, it was probably one of the largest high schools on the New South Wales South Coast at the time that we were at the school. And many of the buildings there, actually, if we think of, I drive past it today and I think, oh my God, the kids of today, you know, they've got it so good. Looking at, they've got actual buildings to go to class in. You know, we had structures that I would not describe as buildings, but they were more like caravans that were kind of being set up on the school to really accommodate, at the time, the overpopulation of the school. So I think you made a really good point there as well, is the people that did go to our school that maybe didn't have access to the privileges and experiences that maybe they would have had if they grew up in a city, have gone on to really achieve some really great things, and I'm really proud of them, and I'm sure, Turia, you are too. What impact do you think some of those early experiences have had on your adult life? You just spoke a little bit about that there, about that grit and determination. Is there anything else that you think that's quite unique from those experiences?
If I reflect on my last few years at school, I think it's really that, and this is just my view on it. I've never tested this and I have no idea, but I kind of feel that if you go to an expensive private school, the teachers are kind of, prodding you along towards your HSC and, checking in with you and making sure you're on task to get your assignments finished. And I don't remember any of that being given to us at high school. And I think that was what made the difference, though, because if you wanted something, then you had to take ownership of it. You had to have responsibility of it, and then you had to make it happen for yourself, because you couldn't rely on, your science teacher doing all of these things for you. You couldn't rely on your English teacher. You couldn't rely on your maths teacher. They were great teachers. They were just like overworked, underfunded, 35 kids in a class. There's only so much that they can do. And so I think that was a really good lesson for me, that if there is something in life that you want, no matter whether you're wanting to learn how to run 5 kilometers, or you're wanting to do a big piece of advocacy work, or you want to, make something happen at your workplace, you have to be willing to be the driver of that and lead that as well.
Yeah, that's such a good point, and something I've never really thought about really deeply, but that accountability and ownership piece,
Yeah.
that's a really, really big thing. And I think, yeah, for me, if I reflect on it, we lived in Borley Point, which was, even a bit more remote than you. For example, you were more the city kid in Ulladulla. We had to commute on the school bus, and, so there was always that kind of the school bus was a very character defining vessel for me, and I think for a lot of people that had to sit on the school bus for half an hour each way into school. But I think there's a lot in that you've just said about that accountability. We learnt from a young age that, if we're going to make something happen, no one's really going to come and do it for us. Would you think that that's true?
No, I totally agree with that. I can't remember. I'm not. I think Australia is really lucky, right? We have a great public education system, and I think lots of people in the world would be so incredibly grateful to be able to go to one of the schools that Sarah and I went to. But it was a public school, didn't have a lot of funding, it wasn't perfect. And I think as well, you learn to be resourceful and just make do.
Yeah. Really good points there. I'm just testing the connection. I just had was a little lag on the connection there. Just checking you can hear me all okay?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. So in terms of something that you think about when you think about resilience, do you think those early experiences do shape, how much resilience you have to draw on later in life, or have any insights on that?
Yes and no. So I think our earlier years can be really formative for sure, and it can be a good chance for us to develop our resilience. But a young child can't really be in control of developing how much resilience they're going to make in those early years. So yes and no. But I think the good news is I don't believe, and I think a lot of academics would agree with me. It's not like we're born with a set amount of resilience, and that's it. I do strongly believe it's something that we can cultivate and something that we can grow. And one of the ways that we can develop resilience is by going through something challenging. And it doesn't always have to be challenging in a bad way. So it could be challenging yourself to learn something new, right? As adults, it's so rare that we try something new for the first time. We get really set in our ways. We get really inflexible. And we kind of feel like we know who we are. We know what we like and we don't like. But I think learning something new, trying something new is a really good way for us to build that level of resilience that we have.
Yeah, I think it is. It's interesting that a lot of people have different thoughts on resilience. I think, people have that view from, you need to just harden up and get on with life, right
Yeah.
through to those academic definitions of resilience. Where
I
do you feel
I
on that?
I think comments like harden up, suck it up, get on with it. I really think that's part of this pervasive culture we have of toxic positivity where you've
Mhm.
just got to suck things up, or you've just got to, it's always going to be rainbows and butterflies. And I find it so nauseating because it's so
Mm,
far from what real life is like. And
mm,
when you're feeling really sad or really upset about something, and you go to your, let's say your HR manager or whoever the person in your workplace that you go and see when you're feeling stressed about something, and that person tells you to suck it up and harden up, that doesn't magically make you feel like, oh, everything's going to be okay. I've just got to harden up. What that does is it tells you that A, what you're feeling isn't valid.
mm,
B, no one's really listening to you. C, no one really cares about you. And I don't
mm,
think feeling like that is a very good starting point, for feeling motivated or for feeling inspired. So I really hate it when people say that stuff, toughen up, suck it up, get on with it. That's just life. I think that's so invalidating for a lot of
mm.
people. And especially when you're thinking about, being a woman in the workplace, being a mother in the workplace, being a minority in the workplace, that can be really, really upsetting and really harmful to say that to some types of people, because we don't always know what other people have experienced.
Absolutely. I think words have impact, and particularly in the
Yeah.
workplace, responses you spoke about there in the workplace are really important. And that resilience, the way workplaces do, define resilience in that sense is really important. So you would know that there is a real need for resilience in modern workplaces, and organizations can sometimes, in my experience, take a tokenistic approach to resilience, kind of sending staff on resilience training and, keeping their fingers and toes crossed and hoping for the best. What are your thoughts on how workplaces can genuinely support people to build resilience? And I know you've already shared some views on that today, but where do you think some of kind of the real big ticket items are for organizations to be thinking about?
I'm not sure. I understand what you're saying about those tokenistic approaches. And I think sometimes it's almost like we might be trying too hard to, to tick this box. Earlier on, I mentioned that, trying something new or challenging yourself in a positive way is a really good opportunity to develop resilience. That's part of what we do at my workplace, teaching people how to run, new skill, embodied cognition, all of those types of things. I really believe that helps people to build resilience. And that's been some of the data that we've pulled out of it as well. So I think a resilience training camp, I'm not quite sure. Maybe some of them will be effective. Some of them might not be as effective. But I think if you're wanting to support people to be more resilient, I think a good place to start would be to question why it is that you're trying to make employees be more resilient, because coming to work should be a safe place for people to be at. They should feel empowered. They should feel like they have some level of agency. They should feel like they're able to make a difference, all of those types of things. I don't think they should have to armor up, suck it up, toughen it out just to be able to, go to work and then come home to their families.
Yeah, really good points there. It's that questioning of the why. Why do we
Yeah,
need to do this? Let's kind of examine that and spend a bit more time in that space.
yeah.
So we know that Australian workplaces, they now have a legal duty to proactively manage psychosocial hazards. When we talk about psychosocial hazards, we're talking about things like bullying, harassment, discrimination, and burnout, any types of things in the workplace environment that can cause psychological harm. So these things are now no longer an optional nice to have when it comes to protecting people from these risks and hazards in the workplace. And what role do you see resilience playing, do you think, in helping organisations manage some of these hazards? And why do you think it's important that organisations do?
Well, I think to start with, like you said, it's not really an optional, right? Like employers have a legal obligation now to manage these hazards on behalf of their employees. I think probably someone who is maybe a little more resilient, if you think about what characteristics they would have, they might be better able to manage their own their work. They might be able to set better boundaries. They might be able to let someone know if something that person's saying is, is affecting them or influencing them. So I think probably in those ways, resilience training can be helpful for an organisation to try and manage those hazards. But we talked a little bit about the start. I said I was on this TV show, this reality TV show, and I never would have thought that this would have happened to me, but I actually got really badly bullied on that TV show. And up until that point, when people had talked to me about workplace bullying, I never really appreciated the gravity of what that meant. But it was a really, it wasn't the darkest moment in my life, but it was a really difficult point for me because everyone else around me would see this bullying take part and they would say things, like, don't let it worry you, don't let it affect you, they're just carrying on. But no one really stood up for me or advocated for me. And I think if you're the person being bullied, it's probably a little bit of a stretch to think that person is going to be, calm and rational, politely tell the bully to stop. Everything's all going to be calm. And then when they tell the bully to stop, the bully's going to say, oh, okay, no worries, I'll stop. I don't really think it's as straightforward as that. So I think, supporting the person that's going through the thing, but also, I guess, empowering the other team members to call things out if they feel like something's not right, to be able to call it out.
Yeah, really good points there. That bystander effect. I think a lot of people in organisations, you do see something and you think, wow, that is really bad behaviour, but people kind of go into that protective mechanism and they don't do something about it or they don't say something about it. It's very interesting. And I think that's something that I actually spoke last week on a podcast on the ABC, This Working Life podcast, about workplace bullying. And that was one of the points that I made, that some of the HR processes that are in place, which you just spoke about there, the first HR process that is traditional and recommended is that if you're being bullied, you confront the bully and you tell them to stop bullying you. And you spoke about that, and that is kind of, you see that in it kind of goes through all HR policies and procedures, that's what you should do as your first option. And I think, that doesn't actually work. It can actually put people in a position of danger, because if they're dealing with someone that is a serious bully and they're going to say, it can almost inflame the situation. So I think we've got a lot of work to do, particularly in the HR profession, around how do we help people that are being bullied to, not in that way, and look at different options for them.
Yeah, I agree. That's such a good point, Sarah.
Yeah. So younger people, we know they're coming into the workplace. And I know when I think about when I was coming into the workplace, younger people are always seen as, we're Generation Y, you and I. We were kind of seen as, these Gen Ys coming in, and look at them, you look at, there is that kind of, that interesting element to that, in terms of people that are younger are often seen as maybe not having as much resilience as older people, or thinking about resilience in a different way. What do you think? Does age impact resilience?
I know as I've gotten older, I know who I am a little bit better and a little bit more, and I probably feel more confident in the person I am. And I think if you feel more confident at your workplace, you're probably going to be a little bit more resilient, because you're going to be able to call people out, pull people up, say, no, I can't do that extra project because I'm already doing X, Y, and Z. I think you're going to have better boundaries around your time. So I think that the older I've gotten, I think I have become more resilient, but I also don't, we have this view that younger people are like snowflakes. And I don't really think they are. I think they just look at the world a little bit differently to us. And you think about the world in which they live in. Their attention's been fragmented by social media. They're seeing all of these global issues that people our age and older have had decades to deal with, and nothing yet has been done. And so I don't think it's that they're necessarily less resilient. Maybe they are, because they just don't have the life experience that we do. But I also don't think they're snowflakes. I think they just think about things a little more differently. And I think just like they could learn from people who are older and hopefully a little bit wiser, we could also learn something from them.
Yeah, it's that opportunity to see that. And I think that's been kind of hampered as well with hybrid working and working at home. A lot of younger people that have come into the workplace during COVID as well have had that, where they're just working at home and not interacting with people in that face-to-face way that maybe you and I had that benefit of being able to do. It's going to be very interesting to see how that all comes through. I'm just noticing here, we're getting some comments coming through, particularly the comments you made, Turia, about the experience of bullying. Someone's just said there that they noticed that, that they're resonating there with what you said about, just had been told to hang in there and just kind of suck it up.
Worst bit of advice. Yeah. If somebody in your team comes to you and says that they're being bullied, please do not say just, suck it up or hang in there. Things will get better. I just don't think that's effective. And someone also said, agreed with what you said, Sarah. They said it can seriously backfire taking on a bully in the workplace. And I would probably agree with that statement as well, with my limited experience of it.
Absolutely. And I think too, another comment that's just come through here about younger people have also learned they don't have to take the crap that we used to. And I think we see that as well a lot, don't we, in terms of just younger people saying, hang on a second, no, I'm not going to do that.
And I think, maybe this is a generalization, but, older people might say, well, I had to do that. I've gone through that, so you're just going to have to suck it up. And I think it's actually really brave of somebody to say, no, I'm actually not going to do that, and I'm not legally required to do that, and this is outside of my job role. I think it's quite brave of them to be able to do that. And so if anything, maybe we should thank people who are willing to rock the boat just that little bit, because I think that's probably how change happens as well in the workplace.
Yeah, embrace that disruption is
embrace the disruption.
Yeah. I know you have this amazing program, Run with Turia, and we've spoke about this, and I was a bit frightened about the running part when you spoke about it, but I do try to run. I'm not very graceful, or I'm not going to be doing ultra marathons anytime soon. But what really kind of stood out to me is that there is a lot of mindset benefits to that program that could be really helpful for organisations that are looking to more proactively manage some of these psychosocial hazards that we spoke about. How do you think the program could benefit with resilience and managing some of those things we've spoken about today for organisations more broadly?
Yeah, I guess if you're looking at the program, it's really quite simple. We're teaching people how to run their first 5 kilometres. We're teaching them how to do something that they might not be confident at doing just yet. And I think it's along that journey of them learning something new that you see all of these mindset transformations happen. So, for example, that it's okay for them to say no to things. So many of us, women in particular, find that saying no to stuff it's not ingrained in us, and it can be a really difficult thing for us to be able to do. Time management, again, learning to manage your time so that you can run helps you to build resilience, because it's all about how you're managing your day, how you're setting up your day, what outcomes you've had for that day as well, and also just what happens when you set a goal that you might be a little bit scared of, and then you achieve it. And I think, so often in the workplace, we might be reluctant to say yes to something. We might not put our hands up in a meeting. We might want to, just go and see our workplace manager to try and change our role, but we might be lacking that bit of confidence. And one of the biggest things I've seen about the running program is it has improved people's confidence in themselves and in their skills. And the really interesting thing too is that, and this has been my understanding of women in the workplace, that women feel like they have to be competent at something before they can apply for it or before they can give it a go. And so when they learn to run, it gives them this understanding that they might not be competent at it yet, but they have the mindset to be able to work it out, figure it out, learn it in order to be competent. So they're just some of the, I guess, the benefits that I've seen from teaching people how to run.
Yeah, it's interesting as you're speaking there. It seems to really come back to that accountability and ownership piece as well that you spoke about earlier, that running gives you that kind of identity in that space of being really accountable and owning, what it is that you're doing. And the other point you made there about women always kind of being reluctant to do something unless they feel they're 100% competent. That point there about, running, you don't have to be 100% competent at first. You just kind of build it up as you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great, Turia. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention about the program or anything we've spoken about today?
No, but if anyone is interested in the program, just shoot me an email. It's just info@turiapitt.com, and we can set up a time to call. And Sarah, I really enjoyed chatting with you. It's always so funny because we went to school together. I'm pretty sure it would have been like over 2 decades ago now. It's like
Absolutely.
it was it was a while ago. And so and sometimes I get this kind of imposter syndrome about being an adult and talking about this sort of stuff. But I think that's something that everyone experiences as well. And so, yeah, it's just really good to chat with you and hang out with you after all these years.
Likewise, it's been great. If there's any other questions from anyone in the group, really appreciate the contributions as well to the session today. But if there's no other questions, thank you so much, Turia. This has been such a great conversation. I hope everyone online has also got a lot of benefit from it, and we'll see you back here again soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Bye, Sarah.
Bye, Turia.
Bye, guys.